Hello, everyone. This is the Metaphysical Micto Griffin Red, and I want to welcome you to the second part of a second look at the story of Cain and Abel. I hope you enjoyed the previous video, the first part. I hope you found it informative and enlightening. And for those of you who are Bible thumpers and sanctified, Holy Ghost filled, slave Christian niggas, turn this video off because you're not going to like what I got to say. Now, part two to the story of Cain and Abel. And this particular information is from a PDF, from a link online that I discovered. I will provide it in the description box. Feel free to look at it and download this PDF for yourself. And the name of this PDF is called "Did Cain Kill Abel, or Is It the Other Way Around?" by Carla von Hofmannsthal. Credit and shout out to Miss Carla for putting this PDF together. And this actually is a text of the George Spiro Marlin Memorial Purim Lecture. This is back in 2007. So it's about a decade old right now. Now, let's begin. We start with the problem. This is what we are told in church and school and the synagogues. In the beginning, God created not only the heavens and the earth, but also a nice heterosexual couple, Adam and Eve. The couple in this narrative gave birth first to a male named Cain, who became a farmer, and then to Abel, who became a shepherd. We are then told that the farmer Cain killed the shepherd Abel, an entirely unprovoked crime in this narrative, and that this crime was the first murder known to man or God. We are now in the 21st century, and nobody alive can claim to be an eyewitness to these alleged events. But we do know more than a little what the authentic voices of the past can teach us. To reach the truth, we have to go beyond the conventional twaddle of priests, rabbis, and theologians. In this article, we shall hear a more authentic narrative. One has been passed down to us in the oral and written literature of oppressed peoples of Europe and peoples of color everywhere. This oft-forbidden, hidden, persecuted, and very robust tale tells us that, in fact, it was in fact Abel who killed Cain. B, the brothers Cain and Abel had two mothers, Lilith and Eve. And C, the idea of a male Adam as a parent of these brothers is a fabrication of the homophobic, patriarchal officialdom of Western religion. This article could deal with no more than the first part of this liberation narrative, the killing of Cain by Abel. The liberation tradition. Among those resisting the manufactured consent to the Cain-Abel fraud, the name of Charles Baudelaire, born 1821 to 1867, ranks high indeed. It says, "Race to Abel, voici ta honte, la feu est vaincu par la pieux." Those of you who speak French, please forgive me if I mispronounced anything. I'm just reading it as it's written here on this PDF, so please forgive me. It's not intentional. Of course, Baudelaire was also the first modern writer to celebrate lesbian love. No wonder he is so despised by the self-appointed guardians of conventional morality. A deeper consideration of the life and work of Baudelaire gives us a clue to why he, among with his contemporaries in the French literary canon, will grasp the true meaning of the age-old folk wisdom that has been turned upside down in the conventional version of Genesis. Baudelaire was, before becoming a Frenchman, he was that too, of course, a man of color. Born in Haiti, deeply immersed in the tradition of Jean-Jacques Dessalines and Toussaint Louverture. Shout out to that man. He was actually the one who led the Haitian Revolution and freed the slaves down in Haiti. May you rest. He married his comrade Jean Duval in Jacmel, Haiti, in about 1840. which is his wife, together, they devoted a lifetime of study into the false and the true in biblical transmission. Their independent discovery, although of course they were not the first, that it was Abel who killed Cain, and that the parents were the lesbian couple Lilith and Eve, constituted an intellectual achievement of the very highest order. But the Baudelaires were very exceptional. In the sections to follow, we will have little opportunity to refer to writers in the conventional canon, generally speaking. These gentlemen, how rare it is to find women in this group, always knew on which side their bread was buttered. It is a knowledge that obviously is indispensable for canonic status. To get at more truthful narratives, we have to search those anonymous sources to which the wisdom of the oppressed of all ages has been preserved. Folk tales and folklore, and scriptures from third world peoples, and at last but not least, the collective unconscious as revealed to us in the work of Carl Jung, an analytical psychologist. Shepherd and farmer. Abel. Bible translations that are promoted by Western religious establishments portray Abel as a shepherd, or similar expressions like keeper of sheep, so forth, so on and so forth. The Hebrew of the Masoretic text, however, speaks of Ro-E Tson, that's R-O'-E-T-S-O-N, which in the most ancient traditions carries quite a different meaning. We know that the Hebrews R-E is etymologically related to the modern French roue, a debauched person, and indeed the early sources and indeed the earliest sources portray Abel as disreputable. But that is only the beginning. The ancient sources, as they have been preserved in the treasure of popular tradition, show Abel, the shepherd of the false Bibles, as actually the originator of the rapacious private enterprise, wheeling and dealing in livestock that has been part of human history ever since. These early thieves and robbers preyed on the poor and exploited from earliest times. Abel has been seen in the traditions of lower classes as representing a class enemy, the armed general of the exploiting class. In these sources, Abel is used as shorthand for later figures of the same type. Over and over, these Abels in ancient and medieval history have preyed on farmers and working people, murdering, killing, and robbing. And in the early events portrayed in Genesis, in its authentic version, show this first Abel as the killer of his brother Cain. What a lecture for Sunday school, huh, folks? Wow. Wouldn't that turn some passes on their head if you went to a church with this particular information? Man, they would throw you up out of there so quick, wouldn't be funny. But I digress. Perhaps even more instructive than folk tales is in ancient scripture, however, is the evidence from archetypes in the recorded dream world of the human race. The great Swiss scholar Carl Jung, among other insurgent scholars, has been able to prove that the conventional Genesis versions are fraudulent. Wherever we look into this rich depository of human consciousness represented by archetypes, we find an Abel-like predator wielding the knife of assassination and violation. This figure is always associated with the mercenary dealing in livestock and the robbery of the working farmers. And equally, I don't know how to pronounce this word, it's ubiquitos, ruling class, theoreticians have represented shepherds as benign and caring. It is the caring of the wolf, of course, exactly not a friend of the sheep. B. Cain. The demonization of Cain by the ruling classes throughout human history sometimes had a comical side. In the borough of Brooklyn, in the city of New York, working people long ago named one of their streets after Cain, symbol of the working farmer, victim of the rapaciousness of the ruling class. Cain Street persisted until the beginning of the 20th century. But as bad luck would have it, a group of rich Jewish merchants found a suitable site for their synagogue, an abandoned Protestant church on that very street. What to do? Tammany politicians were hurriedly canvassed, and one of these gentlemen, an Irish Catholic ward healer named James Cain, also known as the Silent Monarch of the Sixth Ward, graciously agreed to lend his name for a quick name change by City Hall. And so it was that the newly named King Street Synagogue was saved the embarrassment of being thought of as a people's house of worship. But no such Tammany sleight of hand has been able to prevent a steady flow of visitors to this renamed King Street Synagogue. People of color, working class New Yorkers, says gay, lesbian, transgender folks who look to the Cain of old as their tribune, asked for James Cain, who remembers him. What was Cain's occupation? The conventional Hebrew Bible editions say that he was Oved Adamah, which is a tiller of the soil. But this interpretation is clearly a distortion of the most original sources. The vowel O that modern Jewish and Christian versions use here is not justified by the ancient sources. A profound study of these traditional materials reveals with great clarity that the initial vowel should be read as E. So the correct term is Eved Adamah, a slave of the land. So it turns out that from the beginning, as the story was understood by ordinary people from earliest times, Cain was the slave of Abel. Are you guys still with me? I hope so. Let's move on. The struggle between Cain and Abel, as the oppressed have always known, was a class struggle. Abel had the power and the weapons, and Cain became his victim in the first recorded homicide. At least that is tradition handed down among working people, the act of killing. The key passage in Genesis about the alleged killing of Abel by Cain is in chapter 4, verse 8. Cain set upon his brother Abel and killed him. The three-word English expression "and killed him" is rendered in the Hebrew by the single term vayar hargehu, where the prefix va is translated as and. The postfix hu is rendered in English as him, with the medium root letters he, resh, gimel referring to the verb to kill. In the older Indo-European languages, shout out to Tito for mentioning the Indo-European languages, where most of the Germanic and all of the other European languages come from. It says, in the older Indo-European languages, there is a system of inflection that distinguishes, among other things, between a subject and an object. So it will always be clear who kills whom in this language. But in Hebrew, there is no such inflection. And therefore, the question of who kills whom here and elsewhere in the Bible has been deduced from word order alone. So the arrangement of the nouns, in this case, the proper names, is crucial to our understanding who is the murderer and who's the victim. It is at this point that it becomes clear that the demonization of Cain has no warrant in the authentic Bible sources. The late Professor Harry M. Orlinsky, a distinguished expert on Bible translation, explains the details of the conventional Genesis 4, chapters 4, verse 8, misrepresentation, adding, such ancient versions as Septuagint, Samaritan, and Targum, Jonathan, not to mention the Peshitta and Vulgate reject the demonization of Cain. Collective consciousness. Transmission of the wisdom of ages, of course, is not restricted to written records. The fact the unwritten tradition is in certain matters more reliable because it's less subject to manipulation by the powers that be. In the case of Cain and Abel legend, it turns out that the unwritten transmission has become a bulwark for preserving the truth. We know that previously that the contributions to the subject by Jungian psychologists, but Jungians have certainly not been the ones to unearth the strata of truth beneath the mountains of fashionable misrepresentation. A careful study of the writings of Susan Derry, Max Pulver, Werner Wolf, Leopold Belak, and many others reveal that the murder drive, as exemplified by the crime of Abel against Cain, has been discovered in dreams and folktales throughout the ages. Nobody has been more specific on the Cain matter than the Hungarian-born psychiatrist Leopold Sandi. Born in the old Austro-Hungarian Empire as Leopold Sonnenstein, he Magyarized his name in 1911 following the assimilationist tendency of many Hungarian Jews. He became a physician in Hungary, and during the Second World War was briefly imprisoned at Bergen-Belsen by the Germans. After the war, he settled in Switzerland, where I myself had the privilege of meeting him on several occasions. He practiced a form of psychoanalysis there for many years until his death in 1986. In the United States, Sandi was chiefly known as an inventor of the Sandi test, but he was also a powerful thinker and theorist on psychoanalysis. Many hold that he was important as Sigmund Freud, but be that as it may, he certainly was a great pioneer in the psychoanalytic circles concerning the place and importance of collective memory of the human race. And he devoted 2 books to Cain, showing in each that Cain had been the victim, Abel the perpetrator, at least in the collective consciousness of all the nations he studied. These books are not available in English, except for the most courageous of academic libraries. You will search for them in vain in bookstores and on library shelves. The religious establishment has all but succeeded in obliterating the memory of Sandi, only allowing his test to be known. But among those small bands who uphold the banner of truth on all 5 continents, Sandi cannot and indeed will not be forgotten. It is largely due to Sandi's work that there can be no excuse for an educated person to accept the conventional versions that make Cain out to have been a murderer. So, where are we on this matter? The priests and the rabbis of the world, powerfully aided by imperialist governments and their repressive educational establishments, continue to preach the untenable thesis of Cain the murderer. But in most recent times, and especially now that we are in the 21st century, the basic truth can no longer be evaded by an ever-growing thinking public. This public worldwide is beginning to see the truth, and the truth shall set it free. More and more, Cain the victim will be recognized. Let there be no doubt. The general recognition of the truth cannot help but have a salutary effect on all the cultures of our planet. This issue, seemingly petty and perhaps unimportant, will yet turn out to be like the first light of the dawn of a new day in all fields of learning. So, gentlemen and subscribers, there you have it. I felt compelled to really share these two types of different stories and different bits of information concerning the story of Cain and Abel. Again, this is part 2. I hope you have took some knowledge from this. Leave a comment in the description box. Like I said, you don't have to agree with it or whatnot. You don't have to. All I'm asking is you look at this stuff with an open mind. If you feel the need, do a response video to it. I'd appreciate it. And once again, this is the conclusion to a second look at Cain and Abel. Stay tuned for more videos. This is Griffin Red signing off. Thank you.